Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Allison DeYoung here to show you about my theoretical metaphor project. And for this project, I decided to use a social media platform and represent each theory as a user of that social media platform and imagine the things that they would share and how they would comment on each other's posts and how they would friend each other on social media. And the platform that I decided to use was Pinterest. So in looking at sharing this with all of you, I decided that the best way to do it is a screencast, so I hope you enjoy this video. So again, for my project, I represented each theory as a Pinterest user. So the first one that I started with was behaviorist theory, and you can see here's behaviorist theory on Pinterest. She is her own user, and the first thing you can see is that she doesn't have any followers and she's not following anything. The reason for that is that behaviorist theory, of course, is a transmissive theory, and she doesn't have anything in common with the transactive theories. So you'll see later that all the transactive theories have pinned things from each other's boards and have shared things and commented on each other. Behaviorist has not done that. So her user image is a teacher directing a small group, and she wrote for her user bio that reading is a series of observable behaviors. I value conditioned response and explicit instruction. So she's created 3 boards, and you'll see that all of my theory Pinterest users have created these boards. Her first one is about key figures that she admires. So the figures that she pinned were Ivan Pavlov, who of course worked with classical conditioning theory, B.F. Skinner with the operant conditioning theory, and John Watson, the father of behaviorism. So if you click on any of these, which you can do if you go search for behaviorist on Pinterest, I really created this board, you'll see that it links out to biographies of all of these gentlemen. Her next board is all about teaching reading, and this board she pinned a collection of ideas about how behaviorist theory would teach reading. So she's got things like a video of explicit phonics instructions teaching students to sound out words, oral fluency data, charts for marking student success and mistakes with repeated reading. So all of this has to do with her idea that when you teach reading, you're looking for a series of certain observable behaviors that you're looking for students to demonstrate to you. And then her third board is all about her learning theory, and here she's pinned some ideas that are kind of the foundation of her theory. The first is a picture that behaviorism thought was really funny. It's a picture of a mouse, and his sign says, "We'll press lever for food." And then she's got a link to an article about what is behaviorism, a classroom idea called Smarties for Smart Choices, in which you would reward students for successful answers and correct reading in order to condition their behavior, and a chart about what we call gradual release model. I do, we do, and you do. So she likes this because she can provide direct instruction and modeling to the students, and that goes along with her behaviorist theory. So that's behaviorism and how she would interact on Pinterest. So the next theory that joined Pinterest is cognitive theory. Oops. That's how I did it. And here's my cognitivist theory board. So cognitivist theory is a transactive theory, and the first thing I want you to notice is that she has 5 followers, and she's following 5 boards because she interacts with all the other transactive theories on Pinterest. So she is kind of friends on the social media site with all the transactive theories. So cognitivist theory has chosen for her user image an image that represents metacognition, so how thinking and the text interact with each other. And her user bio says, "The act of reading occurs primarily in the reader's mind. The 2 key elements of cognitivism are schema theory and metacognitive thinking." So she's created the same 3 boards that all of my other pinners have. The first is about key figures that she admires, and she's pinned links to biographies and websites about P. David Pearson, Michael Presley, and Richard C. Anderson, who are cognitive psychologists and education researchers who have influenced her theory. She also created a board about her learning theory. So the first thing on here is a e-card that I've seen before on Pinterest, and it says, I was the kid that was actually excited when the teacher told us to read silently, and if you scroll down, you can click on that and see that Psycholinguistic Theory has liked that pin. She wrote beneath that is that, of course, she's excited about reading silently because the primary task of reading occurs in the reader's mind. So then she also has pins about a blog post on incorporating grammar and conventions into writing workshop, because the Cognitivist Theory thinks that teachers should use students' own writing to teach spelling and grammar. And then she's also pinned an anchor chart about schema theory. And you'll see that the other transactive theories, most of them have repinned this anchor chart because they all value background information. And a couple of the other theories have actually commented on this pin, talking about how they view schema. So the transactive theories are interacting with each other on Pinterest. And then her third board for Cognitivist Theory is all about teaching reading. So here's a bunch of pins about how classroom practices would go in the Cognitivist Theory. So she's pinned something about silent reading. She's pinned a video that she really loves about silent reading in the classroom, and there's a part that she comments on where the teacher says that silent reading isn't really silent. There's a whirring noise going on in the kid's head. She really liked that the teacher said that, because that to her just sounded really like the basis of her theory. And then she pinned some resources to help with metacognition and thinking about thinking, because in addition to schema, metacognition is really important to cognitivist theory, and she wanted to share that on Pinterest. So the next theory that joined Pinterest is the Constructivist Theory, and we'll get there through Cognitivist Theory. So Constructivist Theory, you can see, also has 5 followers and 5 following, because she interacts with all of the other transactive theories on Pinterest. Constructivist Theory chose for a user image a picture of a girl putting puzzle pieces together, and then she wrote for her user bio, individual readers must be actively engaged and construct their own meaning. Readers make and test hypotheses through predictions and inferences. So like all my other users, she created a board about key figures she admires, and she put links to information about John Dewey, Frank Smith, Kenneth Goodman, and Louise Rosenblatt. You'll see that Psycholinguistic Theory has commented on the Frank Smith work and has also repinned it to her own key figures board. The Learning Theory board for the Constructivist Theory has an article about the differences between transactional and transmissive theories, and what a behaviorist classroom would look like and what a constructivist classroom would look like. Behaviorist theory actually found this pin too when she was looking around Pinterest, but she didn't pin it because if you click on the article, it really paints behaviorist practices in a poor light and constructivist practices in a positive one. So that's why only constructivists pinned it. And then she has anchor charts about inferences and predictions, because these are kind of the bases of her learning theories, that's what goes on inside the reader's mind, is that they predict and they make inferences as they read to construct their meaning. And her third board is all about teaching reading. So this is how she would teach reading in her classroom. She's got a video of a teacher doing a guided reading lesson in which she has students make predictions, and then some guidelines for reading workshop. She writes about how she agrees with the reading response theory, that workshop is a great way to teach reading skills, and she repinned the double entry journal from another board as well, because she thinks this is how readers interact with and make their own meaning from the text. So that is the constructivist theory on Pinterest. So the next theory that decided to join Pinterest is the reader response theory. And her user image is a cover of a reading response journal from a student. And her user bio says, every individual is unique. Every reading experience is unique. I value 2 stances for reading, efferent and aesthetic. And she's pinned lots of things that can help students understand those. And you'll see if you click on her followers and following that she is being followed and is following the other transactive theories on Pinterest. And you'll see that she's repinned some of their shared ideas. Her first board, of course, is key figures that she admires, and she penned a biography of Louise Rosenblatt, and then also this book called An Experiment in Criticism by C.S. Lewis, where he writes all about how that book is quality is determined based on how a reader reads it. She writes that she really agrees with that writing by C.S. Lewis. Her next board is about her learning theory, and she has 3 pins on this board. The first is a lesson about reader response theory, and the teacher in the lesson points out how both the reader and the text work together to create meaning. The second pin is actually a unit that teachers can buy online, and it's all about how to make meaning with any book and how readers can interact with all kinds of different text and construct unique meanings. And, the Psycholinguistic Theory has liked this pin. And her third pin about learning theory is it's a short article, but it's a good article, and it has the definitions of efferent versus aesthetic reading stance. She wanted to pin that and share it with her friends on Pinterest because it really defined her theory. She wrote beneath it, "I do wish it pointed out that one can read nonfiction for an aesthetic purpose, though," because this article talks about how if you're reading nonfiction, it's an efferent stance. And she says that if you really love that nonfiction and you think it's fun to read, that you could read that from an aesthetic stance as well. Her third board, of course, is about teaching reading. She's got a few pins on here. First of all, she's repinned the double entry journal and the reading workshop guidelines from other boards and written about how those fit into her theory. Then she also pinned a bookmark you can give to your students that says, "Why am I reading this?" And it kind of simplifies aesthetic and efferent stances for kids and has them think about their purpose for reading, which is important for the reader response theory. And then she also pinned a poster about reading partnerships and how students can talk about their books with others. So she thinks this encourages students to read with an aesthetic stance and to have emotions and feelings and thoughts about what they read and share with others. And if you scroll down, you'll see that the Sociolinguistic Theory has commented on this about how partnerships are great because literacy is a function of group membership. And we'll see later that she's also repinned that on her board. So that is the reader response theory using Pinterest. So the next theory that joined Pinterest is the Psycholinguistic Theory. And the Psycholinguistic Theory chose for her user image a word cloud because, as she writes, she values the relationship in words. And she writes that meaning is made in the transaction between the text and the reader. So again, just like all of my other transactive theories, they're all following each other's boards. They're following the learning theory and teaching reading boards. So Psycholinguistic Theory has 2 key readers that she admires. Key figures, sorry. First is Frank Smith, and the next is Kenneth Goodman. And she actually borrowed both of these pins from the Constructivist board because both of these gentlemen fit into both of the theories. Her next board is all about her learning theory. So on this board, she repinned a couple of things from other transactive theories. She repinned the lesson about reader response theory, and she wrote beneath it, "I'm no reader response theorist, but I agree that there are relationships between the reader and the text." She also repinned the reading workshop and wrote about how the reader and the text are interacting to make meaning. She repinned the schema poster and wrote about how schema can help readers to use their semantic cues. And then there's also 2 pins on this board that really exemplify her own psycholinguistic theory. The first is a chart about the 3 cueing systems and how readers use them all. And then the next is a pin all about miscue analysis. It links to a PowerPoint that informs people about why and how to do miscue analysis, which is really important to psycholinguistic theory, so she wanted to share that. And then her final board is about teaching reading. So on this board, she has an anchor chart for students about context clue guidelines and a worksheet about context clues. She thinks it's really important to teach context clues so that students can learn to use semantic and syntactic cueing systems, and it makes them more effective, efficient readers. And then she also pinned a sheet for teachers to use with miscue analysis, and it takes them through the types of miscues and how to identify them and figure out which miscue could mean about their students' reading difficulties. So that is the Psycholinguistic Theory board. Our next transactive theory that is participating on Pinterest is the Sociolinguistic Theory. She's got a funny cartoon for her user image. So the first character, I guess, is Australian, and he says, "Please, mate, bung us some dosh for the dog and bone," which I don't know what that means, and neither does the other character, because he says, "I don't understand. I only speak English." So she thought this was a really funny comic because it shows that this person's literacy is a function of his group membership and the society and culture to which that person belongs. Because Speaker A is speaking English, it's just a different community's version of English. So sociolinguistic theory is, of course, being followed by the other transactive theories on Pinterest and is following some of their boards as well. Her first board is about key figures that she admires, and she's got links to biographies of Lev Vygotsky and Basil Bernstein. Then she has a board about the basis of her learning theory. So first she repinned that poster about schema that several of our transactive theories have liked or pinned. She writes about how schema is important and it's influenced by your cultural and social background. Then she's got a video of authentic literacy, and if you watch this whole video, it points out that you've got to involve students in the larger community with their literacy experiences, which is, of course, important to sociolinguistic theory. Then she has a link about culturally responsive teaching and bringing kids' culture into the classroom and being respectful of that. And then finally, she links to an article that defines what literacy events are, because if someone is going to read her board, she wants them to be really well informed about kind of real-world, authentic literacy events so that they can understand her theory. Her final board is all about how she would teach reading in her classroom using the sociolinguistic theory. So first, she's repinned the poster about reading partnerships that she found on another transactive theory board, and she wrote, "This works with my theory because there are no private acts of literacy. It's a social, cultural group event." And then she wrote, "Of course we work in partnerships." So in her classroom, students view literature in a community sense. And then she pinned an article that doesn't have a picture, but it's a blog post about how struggling readers can develop their literacy by interacting with younger readers. And then there's also this great picture of a kindergarten reading activity in which they went and found letters out in the real world, like E on an Eggo package and J on Jif peanut butter. And she writes, "This is an example of how very young learners can find out that membership in our community demands literacy by learning that letters are all around us." And then the last two pins, this one called Keeping It Real, 8 Best Authentic Sources of Reading Material, and this one, which is called 5 Ways to Build Authentic Reading and Writing into Any Class, are all ideas for teachers about how they can bring authentic literacy and literacy events into their classrooms. So they all talk about how you can teach students to read using menus and resumes and online product reviews and writing emails to friends. Sociolinguistic theory, of course, loves all of this because those are literacy events that show that literacy is a function of your group and community membership. And then our last transactive theory, and really our final theory that's using Pinterest, is the critical literacy theory. She's got a user image that tells about the points of critical literacy, and these include things like evaluating for bias and thinking about how you interact with the text and thinking for oneself, questioning the text. She wrote for her user bio, "The language of a text and a reader's response to the text are not neutral. Be critical of a text's selected worldview. Realize your own oppression." So, of course, she is being followed by and is following the other transactive theories here on Pinterest because they're interacting with each other. And her first board is about key figures she admires. She has a lot of people on here. She's got Paulo Freire, who, of course, wrote Pedagogy of the Oppressed. She's got Wendy Morgan and Ira Shore and Patrick Shannon as some kind of modern critical literacy theorists. And then on her learning theory board, she has 3 pins. The first is a cartoon that she thought was funny. It's a person with a television as a head, and it says, "Don't let others influence your thoughts." And she wrote beneath that, "Yes, text may have implicit or explicit meanings that favor certain ideas. Be critical of what you read." Then there's a pin that has a link to some questions that students can use to evaluate text, and it has questions on it like, what different interpretations are possible, and what views of the world is this text presenting? She wrote beneath it that this exemplifies her learning theory because students always have to question the text to be critical of what the author is choosing to present. The third thing she pinned on her learning theory board is this slideshow about critical literacy. And she loved that there's a slide on here that says, can you trust everything you read? So this is, it encourages teachers to encourage their students to sort of question what they're reading. And then her last board is all about how she would teach reading in her classroom using the critical literacy theory. So she's, of course, got an article here about the role of critical literacy in citizenship. And this is more about social studies, but of course content area literacy is important too, especially to critical literacy theory. And then she's got two articles here that are pretty similar, and they both have ideas for using critical literacy in the classroom. One of them talks about how to get students engaged in projects that involve social action, like writing letters or having a protest. And then another has some ideas about how students can examine multiple perspectives and think about bias in a text. Then she's got a pin about teaching students fact versus opinion. So this is obviously really important to teach even to younger students according to critical literacy theory so that they can figure out an author's bias and evaluate the author's point of view. Reader response theory has actually commented on this and written about how she thinks this is a good reading workshop for practice reading from an afferent stance. And then lastly, she posted some critical literacy and literature discussion questions and prompts. And there are things on this like, let's look more closely at this. Let's study where and how the author shows injustice, or how are the writer's beliefs and perspectives revealed in this text. So she says that this teaches students to analyze pieces according to their social and historical relevance, and that students are given the tools to question the text in situations. And there's a comment on this from reader response theory too. She thinks these are good conversation starters for her reading workshop. So that is critical literacy theory on Pinterest. I hope that you have enjoyed learning about all of the theories and seeing how I imagined that they would be involved on a social media platform and how they would interact with each other. Thanks for watching.